In our previous lecture, we have studied that how the microorganisms are associated with the human body, and we have seen that there are various types of association to which they belong to. We also studied that how the microorganisms can be beneficial to the human body in the production of different compounds or essential elements that are necessary for the growth of the human race. Today in this program, we are going to learn another aspect of the microorganism that is again very much related to the human health, but it is opposite to what we have studied in our earlier lecture. And that we call it as the microorganisms are a threat to the human health. This means the microorganisms are harmful to the human body and therefore they cause disease. Today we are going to focus mainly on the diseases which are caused by the bacteria. There was a golden age of microbiology from 1875 to 1910. During that time, Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch did some pioneering studies, and they proved that microorganisms are the responsible agents to cause many bacterial diseases of the human body. And therefore, they started their work to see the bacteria as a known pathogen. That means an organism which is able to cause the disease in the human body. Now, the human body has got many host or self-defense mechanisms. So, we say that when a microbe overpowers the host defenses, disease results. And now we know the microbe by a specific term, and that is known as pathogen. So, either the bacteria can be a primary pathogen or an opportunistic pathogen.
Ma'am, what are opportunistic pathogens?
When I talk about the primary pathogen, I refer to those bacteria which are primarily pathogenic in nature. That means whenever they come to any human body, they cause disease. But opportunistic pathogens are the one which are primarily a member of the normal microbiota. They are not capable to cause the disease. They can cause the disease when the opportunity comes. For example, the microbe which is present in the nasal passage cannot go towards the sterile region, that is brain. But whenever there is a leakage of cerebrospinal fluid, the microbe travels, goes to the brain and contaminates this sterile region, and the infection called meningitis occurs. So, this is called an opportunistic pathogen. Now, this capability to cause the disease is called pathogenicity. The pathogenicity or the degree of pathogenicity varies, and this degree of pathogenicity is known as virulence. So, one bacteria which is able to cause the disease is called a virulent bacteria, and another bacteria which is not able to cause the disease is called a avirulent bacteria. Now, whatever we study in the microbiology which is related with the human health basically deals with the area of microbiology which is known as clinical microbiology or medical microbiology. And two very important terms that we study in this is infection and disease. Now, infection means whenever a microorganism which is a pathogen comes to the body, replicates and increases its own population, we call it infection in the body. But when it develops into sign and symptoms or clinical manifestations inside the human body, we call it a disease. So, outcome of an infection is always a disease, but this depends on numerous factors. These are the four following factors on which it decides that what will be the outcome of the infection, whether it will lead to a disease or it will not lead to a disease. These are the organism's capability to breach the host barriers. Now, these host barriers are the anatomical barriers of the human body. For example, the skin and the mucous membrane. Skin cannot be invaded so easily. But when we have the traumatic conditions, like we have the burn cases, we have the accidental cases, the wound and the injury, the skin gets exposed, and at that time the microbes are able to enter. In comparison to it, the mucous membrane can be easily penetrated by the microorganisms. The second most important factor on which the disease progression depends on is the microorganisms' biochemical tactics. These biochemical tactics are meant for replication, for colonization in order to establish the infection and ultimately develop into a disease. The third most important factor which a microbe must have is its ability to transmit. That means a successful pathogen is the one which is able to transmit from a diseased person to a susceptible host, because the purpose of the microorganism which is pathogenic in nature is to transmit the disease. And the fourth factor on which it depends upon is the host innate and adaptive immunological responses. And if it becomes weak or suppressed by some other means, the microbes are able to capture it and therefore they cause the disease in the human body. Adherence, entry and toxigenesis. These are the three important properties which a microorganism should have in order to be a successful pathogen. Now, adherence refers to the process of adhesion. This is the basic necessity to establish the process of infection. Now, for this process of adhesion, we should have two things. One is receptor and the second one is adhesin. Now, these two components are present in two biological systems. Receptor is found on the surface of the host cell, while adhesin is found on the surface of the bacteria or the pathogen. Now, this adhesin can be a fimbriae, a pili, a capsule, a part of slime layer or mucus layer. So, we can have different type of adhesins that are present on the bacterial cell surface. But the receptor is mainly a protein component which is present on the host cell surface. After adhesion, the microorganism tries to enter the host cell. Now, every biological entity communicates with the environment. We humans also communicate with the environment because we have got eyes through which we see. We have got a mouth through which we eat. We have got nose through which we breathe. We reproduce and we excrete many toxic waste. And these are basically the sites or the portals of entry of the pathogen, because they are the sites through which the body communicates and they are the sites through which the microorganism enter inside the human body. So, this is called the entry point or the portals of entry of the microorganism. Now, when we talk about the third property, that is called toxigenesis. Toxigenesis is the ability of the pathogen to produce toxins. Now, all the pathogens are not capable to penetrate inside the host cell. There are many pathogens which do not penetrate as a whole, but they produce some toxins and these toxins ultimately penetrate inside the host cell and cause the disease. So, this property of production of the toxin is called toxigenesis. Two different types of toxins can be produced by the bacterial cell. One is called the endotoxin and the other one is called the exotoxin. Exotoxin, as the name goes on, exo means something which is excreted out. So, exotoxins are the chemical compound produced by the pathogen which are excreted out of the bacterial cell, while the endotoxin is an integral part of the bacterial cell. For example, gram-negative bacteria have got lipopolysaccharide, and this lipopolysaccharide is the virulent portion which act as the endotoxin, while the exotoxins are the proteinaceous compounds that are being secreted by the bacteria. Another important property a pathogen should have is the transmission. More successful means more transmission rate. We can have two different types of transmission. One is called horizontal transmission and the other one is called the vertical transmission.
Ma'am, what is the difference between horizontal transmission and vertical transmission?
Now, horizontal transmission means when the transmission of the pathogen takes place in the same strata or in the same level. For example, I have got a disease and through air, water, food or contact, I am going to transmit that disease to the human population. That is called a horizontal transmission of the disease. While the vertical transmission means when a pregnant mother has got a disease and that mother transmits the pathogen to the developing fetus or to the developing child. This type of transmission of the disease is called the vertical transmission, where we see the pathogen is transmitted from one strata to the lower strata. There are different modes of transmission, and based on the modes of transmission of the bacterial diseases can be categorized into 4 groups. Number 1, airborne bacterial disease. Number 2, foodborne and waterborne bacterial disease. Number 3 is soil-borne or arthropod-borne bacterial diseases. And number 4 is sexually transmitted bacterial diseases. Airborne bacterial diseases means those diseases which are transmitted through air. Air is a very good media for transmission because we all breathe the same air. The air is not distributed among the human body. So whenever a person sneezes or coughs, that person excrete out many droplets which contain the minute microorganisms which are pathogenic in nature. And when the same air is being taken up by some other healthy susceptible person, he acquires that particular pathogen and in turn acquires that disease which is coming through air. So we call these diseases as the airborne diseases. So basic function of the airborne diseases is to enter the human body through nose. Let us study the respiratory tract of the human body. The respiratory tract of the human body has been categorized into 2 different zones. One is called the upper respiratory tract, which is more prone to the transmission of the pathogen, and the second one is the lower respiratory tract. The upper respiratory tract takes into account the sinuses, the nasal cavity and the pharynx, while the lower respiratory tract takes into account the larynx, trachea, lungs, bronchi and the diaphragm. So any of the part when infected with the pathogen which is coming through air will be categorized as those diseases which are airborne. Pharyngitis is a very important and very common disease that we all suffer from, which is transmitted through air. Pharyngitis means inflammation of the pharynx. Tonsillitis means inflammation of the tonsil, which is caused by Streptococcus pyogenes. Streptococcal pharyngitis is also known as strep throat. When we have the irritation in our throat, we are not able to swallow, we have a pain in our throat, we call this disease as streptococcal pharyngitis or commonly known as strep throat. This is caused by group A streptococci, abbreviated as GAS. The second most common disease of the upper respiratory tract is scarlet fever. Now this scarlet fever is again caused by Streptococcus pyogenes. So a person when suffers from tonsillitis may suffer from scarlet fever also because the pathogen remains the same, but the clinical symptoms become more severe or more accurate. So what we see in the scarlet fever is there is a production of erythrogenic toxin. Now why erythrogenic? Because this toxin gives the red patches or the red color wherever the body is infected. Here you can see the picture of a hand which is having the scarlet fever. You can see the pinkish red color skin rashes. Another picture here shows that the tongue is being inflamed and the tongue becomes red or strawberry color. We call it a strawberry-like inflamed tongue. The third most important disease of the upper respiratory tract is sinusitis. That means inflammation of the sinuses. Now let us first understand what is sinuses. Sinuses are the air-filled hollow cavity that are present in the facial part of the human body. We basically have 4 different types of sinuses: frontal sinus, ethmoid sinus, maxillary sinus and sphenoid sinus. Now when these air-filled cavity are filled up with fluid, which normally happens when we have common cold. Now when they are filled up with the fluid, what happens? They are the very good source of nutrients for the growth of the bacteria. The bacteria are mainly Streptococcus pneumoniae and Haemophilus influenzae. When these bacteria grow into the sinuses, the lymphocytes, which are the cells of the defense system, they come and try to engulf those bacteria in order to overcome the disease. A large number or a large mass of cells accumulate in the sinus and therefore we have pain of the sinus, and along with that we have the green on the yellowish mucus that comes out. This is the condition of sinusitis. Another disease commonly encountered in the upper respiratory tract is diphtheria, which is caused by Corynebacterium diphtheriae. Here you can see a picture where we see the formation or the development of the pseudomembrane.
Ma'am, how the pseudomembrane formed during diphtheria?
Corynebacterium diphtheriae produces a toxin which is having two subunits, subunit A and subunit B. Subunit A is the toxic part of the toxin. The B subunit remains in the endosome while the A subunit escapes out and it causes the ADP ribosylation of the elongation factor 2 of the eukaryotes, and therefore we call it eukaryotic elongation factor 2 gets ribosylated by the A subunit of the diphtheria toxin. So ultimately what happens is you have a stop of the translation process, that is protein synthesis comes to a halt. When protein synthesis comes to a halt, that means dead tissues are produced along with mucus, along with white cells and along with other fibroblast cell, we have the formation of this pseudomembrane, which is not a true membrane. A halt in the translation mechanism of the protein synthesis develops into the pseudomembrane structure. Tuberculosis is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. This is an airborne disease which is transmitted to a susceptible host when a person takes in the air either through nose or through mouth. The bacteria travels and ultimately reaches the alveoli. That is, after passing through bronchi, it reaches to the alveoli of the lungs. Now, the alveoli has got alveolar macrophages, but the limitation of this alveolar macrophages is they cannot kill Mycobacterium tuberculosis. They can engulf the bacteria, but they cannot kill the bacteria because the bacteria has got certain mechanism by which that killing can be avoided. So, as more bacteria come inside the alveoli, more macrophages come inside and they engulf the bacteria and a mass of cell or a nodule is being formed. Along with that, there is movement of lymphocytes and there is movement of fibroblast cell in order to restrict the growth of the bacteria to a particular region of the lung. You have the formation of a nodule which is called tubercle, and therefore the name comes tuberculosis. We can have two types of patients, one which are having primary TB. In that case, you do not see any formation of tubercle, but the pathogen has infected, but the tubercle formation has not taken place. If they undergo the tuberculin test, a red rash develops on the body of the person. That means the person is affected by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. But when the chest X-ray shows presence of tubercle and the person is not showing any sign and symptoms, that means the mycobacteria is present in the tubercle. They are the reservoir of that bacteria. That is referred to as the latent TB or latent tuberculosis. Foodborne and waterborne bacterial diseases takes into account the digestive system of the human body, because we take food and water which passes on to the stomach. So, let us first study the digestive system of the human body. Now, the digestive system of the human body is also called the gastrointestinal tract, which takes into account the organs like oral cavity, your mouth from where you are taking in food or the water. But there are many organs which are associated with this digestive system or gastrointestinal tract. We call those as the accessory digestive organs. They are the salivary glands, the liver, gallbladder and pancreas. So, any infection which takes place inside these organs leads to the development of a foodborne or waterborne diseases. A very common waterborne or a foodborne disease is food poisoning, which is caused by Clostridium perfringens and Bacillus ceres. Clostridium and Bacillus, both of them are gram-positive rod-shaped bacteria and they are endospore former. And because of this capability to form the endospores, they can resist high temperature, high pH and high physical parameters of the food, and therefore they are capable to survive inside the food for a very long period and cause the disease which is called food poisoning. Another disease we call is botulism, which is caused by Clostridium botulinum. Clostridium botulinum produces a neurotoxin which acts on the neuromuscular junction of the human body, and because of this toxin, the neurotransmitter called acetylcholine, which are present inside the vesicles, cannot be released at the neuromuscular junction. When acetylcholine is not released in the neuromuscular junction, this causes the flaccid paralysis of the muscles. Therefore, the muscles are not able to contract and the muscles remain in their flaccid position. So, botulism ultimately leads to flaccid paralysis. Now, these Clostridium botulinum spores may be present inside the dirt, and therefore, when you have an injury or a wound, they mature, and that is known as wound botulism. However, there is another type of botulism which is called infant botulism or SIDS, S-I-D-S. SIDS is an abbreviated form of sudden infant death syndrome. Now, this normally occurs in infants, those who are given honey. Honey is a very good source of the spores of botulinum. So, when the baby is regularly given honey which has got the spores of Clostridia, it matures in the gastrointestinal tract of the baby and produces the toxin, and suddenly it seems that the baby is dead. This is called a sudden infant death syndrome. We go on to the waterborne diseases commonly known to us is cholera and diarrhea. Cholera is caused by Vibrio cholerae, and there are different forms of diarrhea. They can be watery diarrhea, they can be bloody diarrhea, which are caused by different strains of Escherichia coli. We have another waterborne disease which is called shigellosis, caused by different species of Shigella, but the prominent one is Shigella sonnei. Now, this Shigella produces a toxin which is called Shiga toxin. Though Shigella is a gram-negative bacteria, it produces this exotoxin which is Shiga toxin. The cells of the vasculature or the vascular endothelium are destroyed by this Shiga toxin. As a result, the blood vessels collapse and we have traces of blood in the stool. Along with the watery diarrhea, this leads to the bloody diarrhea. Another important disease is gastric ulcer, or we call it peptic ulcer, caused by Helicobacter pylori. Helicobacter pylori is such an organism which is able to survive for quite a long in the acidic pH of the human stomach. The human stomach has got an acidic pH of 2 to 3, but still Helicobacter is able to survive. This is because Helicobacter produces an enzyme called urease, and this urease breaks down the urea which is passing through the stomach. When the urea is being broken down, we have production of ammonia. This ammonia gives the alkaline condition to the bacteria, and therefore the Helicobacter is able to survive in this high acidic condition of the stomach. Helicobacter, along with the production of ammonia, destroy the stomach lining of the human, and ultimately we have the formation of the ulcer which is called the peptic ulcer or gastric ulcer. A very common disease of this category is tetanus, which is caused by Clostridium tetani. Clostridium tetani again produces a toxin which is a neurotoxin, and this inhibits the release of neurotransmitters which are GABA, gamma aminobutyric acid, and glycine. And since this transmission of the neurotransmitters have been stopped, we have stiffness of the muscles. Neonatal tetanus is a very common symptom. That means whenever the umbilical cord is being cut off from the mother in order to separate the baby, gets infected with neonatal tetanus because the umbilical cord has got the infection of Clostridium tetani. However, the stiffness of the muscles can be seen in the case of an adult human. Another disease is called gas gangrene. Another name of this disease is myonecrosis caused by Clostridium perfringens. Here we have the fermentation of the carbohydrates of the muscle which releases gas, and therefore the name comes gas gangrene. Ultimately, the cells do not receive oxygen and they became purple or blue-black in color. the only remedy of this disease is amputate those parts where the disease has occurred. Plague is a disease caused by Yersinia pestis. Yersinia pestis is transmitted through a flea which is called a oriental rat flea. Yersinia pestis forms a blood clot, and therefore this blood clot starves the flea and the flea searches for the blood meal. And whenever such a flea bites a human, it transmits the Yersinia pestis pathogen into the bloodstream of the human, and the human suffers from plague. Another disease caused by Bacillus anthracis is anthrax. We can have three different types of anthrax as inhalation anthrax, gastrointestinal anthrax, and cutaneous anthrax. The names are given according to their ports of entry. Cutaneous skin, gastrointestinal is gastrointestinal region of the body, that is your digestive tract, and inhalation when it is passes through the nasal passage. Gonorrhea is a very common example of this category caused by Neisseria gonorrhoeae. If a mother is having gonorrhea and gives birth to a baby, the baby suffers from the disease which is called ophthalmia neonatorum. Because the birth canal of the mother is infected with Neisseria gonorrhoeae, the eyes of the baby are affected. Another sexually transmitted disease is syphilis caused by Treponema pallidum. The primary syphilis is characterized by the formation of a canker, which is a hard purple color or deep black color wound on the surface of the skin. However, the secondary syphilis is characterized by the formation of the skin rashes all over the body of a person, which sometimes misinterprets with measles, chickenpox or rubella. Congenital syphilis is another disease when the mother who is infected with syphilis passes on this disease to the fetus. We have congenital syphilis, which may result in stillbirth also. The microorganisms are associated with the human health. They can be beneficial and they can be harmful also. So, when they are beneficial, we call the microbes as our friends, and when they are harmful or causing various disease, we call them foe to the human race. Therefore, in the biotechnological industry, when we exploit the microorganisms, we should be very careful whether we are using the microorganisms as our friends or as our foe.